The first knife felt like surprise more than pain. A hard shove just beneath his ribs that stole the breath from him and turned the yard into a spinning circle of black cloaks and pale faces. Jon Snow had heard the word traitor in 100 tones since he'd come south of the Wall, but never like this, whispered as a prayer, spoken by men who would not meet his eyes. He tried to speak, to make sense of it, to call the watch to order the way he always had, but another blade went in and the command broke apart in his throat. Snow rushed up to meet him. It was strange, in that last instant before his knees hit. How clean it looked, new fallen, untouched. When the world inside him was red, he saw Bowen Marsh's lips moving. He saw Ser Alliser Thorne's jaw clenched so tight the tendons stood out like cord. He saw Wick Whittlestick flinching as if he had struck himself. Then Ghost was there. Not the animal he'd sent away, not the distant presence he'd felt like a severed hand, but the white shadow crashing through the dark, teeth bared, fur bristling, eyes like embers under snow. The men stepped back, a dagger lifted. Someone shouted. Jon tried to lift his own arm, his own hand, but his fingers were numb and heavy, and the yard was far away, and the cold was not on his skin anymore. It was everywhere. He fell and kept falling, but not through air, through smell, iron and fear, the rank sweat under wool, grease from the cook fires, the sour bite of old piss freezing in the cracks of stone. Ghost's world struck him like a tide, thick and sharp and immediate. He had no breath, and yet he breathed. He had no eyes, and yet he saw. Low to the ground, the yard enormous, every boot a moving cliff. His own body lay sprawled in the snow, black cloak spread like a torn wing, hair dark with meltwater. He watched it with Ghost's eyes, and a sound tore out of him that was not a word. He tried to climb back into himself. He tried as he had tried before, when he'd slid into Ghost in dreams and woken with the taste of blood and the memory of running. But this time there was no waking. This time the pull was wrong. His body was a thing left behind. His skin was a coat he'd dropped in a storm. Ghost lunged. Men scattered. Steel flashed. A torch toppled, hissing in the snow. Ghost's jaws snapped shut on cloth and found flesh, and the taste of it was so hot it shocked. Jon could not tell where one ended and the other began. There was only the urge to kill what had hurt him, to tear, to punish. A dagger came down and Ghost twisted aside, shoulder burning as the blade scored fur and skin. The world narrowed to white and red and black, and then something else took hold. Not a hand, not a chain. A hook sunk into his mind and dragged, hard and cold and certain, as if someone had reached inside his skull and seized him by the roots. Ghost skidded, claws scrabbling, head snapping toward the dark beyond the yard, toward the wall that loomed like a frozen god. Jon felt it too. A direction, a summons, a hunger. Ravens cried out above the battlements, sudden and frantic. Their calls did not sound like birds. They sounded like laughter caught in a throat full of bones. Jon tried to resist. Ghost threw his weight into the snow as if bracing against a storm. But the pull did not come from the wind. Came from under the world. From the deep places where the roots of trees remembered every foot that had ever crossed the earth. The yard vanished. For a heartbeat there was nothing at all. No smell, no sound, no cold, no heat. Only falling. Then white branches filled his vision. Not the clean white of snow, but the pale bone of weirwood, twisted and tangled and wet with sap the color of blood. The air tasted of old wood and rot and something sweeter, like crushed berries left too long in a bowl. Jon, whatever he was now, hit the ground without impact. Frosted leaves lay under him like a carpet of dead hands. Above, ravens clustered in a dark crown, their eyes shining. Somewhere deeper in the roots, a man began to breathe, slow and ragged, and the sound carried like a drumbeat through the wood. A voice came from everywhere at once, thin as wind and heavy as stone. Not yet, not you, not finished. The cave was not a cave as men told it in taverns, a hole with darkness and dripping water. It was a throat. The walls were living, lined with roots that pulsed faintly as if they carried a slow heart. The cold did not sit on the skin. It sat inside the bones. Jon's breath fogged even though he was not sure he had lungs. He looked down at his hands and saw them, and yet saw through them as well, fingers made of mist, edges fraying like smoke. Across from him the tree man sat trapped in wood. Once, Jon had heard old Nan speak of the three-eyed crow, and he had laughed as boys laughed at old women's stories. This was no crow. This was a man grown into a weirwood, his body threaded through with roots, his skin gray and stretched tight, one eye closed and sunken, the other a red ruin that stared with the patience of centuries. 100 ravens watched with him, their heads tilting in unison. Jon could feel them like needles in his mind. Beside the roots sat Bran Stark. He looked smaller than Jon remembered, too thin for the furs piled over his legs, but his eyes were older. The boy's face held a calm that did not belong in any child's skull. He watched Jon the way the old man watched Jon, as if seeing not a man but a door. Mira Reed stood behind Bran, spear in hand, shoulders rigid, fear and determination warring in her mouth. Her gaze flicked to Jon's hands and then away, as if she could not decide whether he was a ghost. "What is this?" Jon's voice came out wrong. It sounded like his voice, but distant, like a thing shouted down a well. "Where am I?" The old man's lips barely moved. The voice came anyway. "You are where all roads meet, Jon Snow, where all roots drink." Jon swallowed and tasted sap, bitter and coppery. "I was killed." "Yes," the voice said, and there was no sorrow in it, only fact. "Your brothers did their duty as they understood it." "They murdered me," Jon snapped, and the ravens shifted, a rustle like rain on dead leaves. Heat flared in him, anger, betrayal, so sharp it almost felt like life. "Why am I here?" Bran Stark leaned forward, fingers gripping the arms of his chair. "Because you didn't go," Bran said quietly. Jon stared. "Didn't go where?" "Where men go," Bran said, "when their songs end." The three-eyed raven's red eye blinked slowly. "Death is not always a door, Jon Snow. Sometimes it is a crack in the wall." At the word wall, something shivered through the roots. Jon felt it like a distant tremor, as if the world itself recoiled. He turned his head and the cave opened into darkness that was not darkness. It was distance. In that distance he saw the wall, his wall, rising across the world, a pale scar on the skin of the earth. But it did not look like ice now. It looked like glass stretched thin over black water. "You have been standing on a lock," the raven said, "all your life. The wall is not only stone and ice. It is memory. It is oath. It is old magic built from the fear of what lies beyond." Jon's mouth dried. He saw again the blue eyes in the snow, the dead men walking, the silent army in the storm. "The others." "Yes," Bran whispered, and the word was almost reverent with dread. Jon took a step forward. His foot made no sound on the leaves. "Then why bring me here?" "Why? Because you were meant to be a bridge," the raven said. "And now you are broken. Broken things can be made into tools." The bluntness of it struck harder than any knife. Jon felt the old anger rise again, the stubborn defiance that had carried him through Winterfell and the Wall and the Wild. "I'm not your tool," the ravens cried out, harsh and mocking. The three-eyed raven's red eye fixed on him. "You are not yours," it said softly. "Not anymore." Bran's eyes did not leave Jon. "You're still Jon Snow," Bran said, as if offering a rope. "But you're also more. The wolf kept you. The tree caught you." Jon thought of Ghost in the yard, white fur stained red. He felt, faint and far away, a tug. Ghost's heartbeat, frantic and wild, pulling at him like a child pulling at a sleeve. It made his throat tighten. "Ghost," he breathed. The raven's voice took on something like satisfaction. "Yes, your bond is deep. Deep enough to hold you between breaths. Deep enough to carry you across." Jon's gaze snapped back. "Across what?" The old man's smile was barely there, a crease in dead skin. "Across fire," it said. "Across blood. Across the sky." Jon felt the roots tighten, the cave narrowing around him like a fist. Somewhere beyond the tree and the ravens he sensed a vastness. Heat in the far distance, a pulse like a drumbeat made of flame. His mind recoiled from it instinctively. Bran flinched too, as if he felt it. Mira's knuckles whitened on her spear. The raven leaned forward a fraction, and the ravens above shifted, a black wave. "You want to live," it said. "You want to fight. You want to save your world." Jon's mouth formed the word yes before he could stop it. "Then learn," the raven said, "or die properly." The roots beneath Jon's feet stirred. The cave fell away. Jon found himself in a forest that was older than any forest he had ever seen. The trees were thicker, their trunks wider, their branches tangled like the ribs of giants. Snow lay in pockets under the roots, but the air tasted of damp earth and smoke. Men moved among the trees, their faces painted, their hair braided with bone. They wore furs stitched with gut and carried spears that looked too crude to be deadly. Until Jon saw how they held them, how their feet found the ground with the easy silence of hunters. A weirwood stood at the center of the camp, its white bark cut with faces that wept red sap. Its leaves were not the pale blossoms Jon knew from the south. They were deep crimson, and when the wind came they fell like drops of blood, turning the earth into a carpet of old war. By the fire stood a man with scars across his cheeks and throat, his eyes half-lidded as if listening to something deeper than the crackle of flame. Wolves moved around him, not wild and wary but confident, as if they belonged. Jon could feel their minds like shadows brushing his own. The scarred man spoke to the men around him, but Jon did not understand the words. It was not the common tongue. It was harsh and old, full of guttural sounds. Yet meaning came anyway, sliding into Jon's thoughts as if the tree translated it through its roots. The scarred man raised his hand, palm open. One wolf stopped and lifted its head. Its gaze locked onto the man's. For a heartbeat Jon saw the world blur, as if two visions tried to occupy the same space. Then the wolf's eyes changed, less animal, more human, and the wolf moved with purpose toward the edge of the camp. Jon's stomach tightened. He had warged before in dreams by accident and instinct. This was deliberate, controlled, clean. A raven landed on a low branch above Jon, so close he could have reached out and touched it. His eye shone too bright, too aware. He knew without knowing how that it was not merely a bird. "Watch," the raven's voice murmured, not heard but felt. The scarred man's mouth twitched, almost as if he heard the whisper too. He stepped toward the weirwood and pressed his forehead to its bark. Red sap smudged his skin. Jon felt the tree's memory open like a wound. Suddenly he was the scarred man. He felt the weight of furs, the ache of old cuts, the stink of smoke in his hair. He felt the fire's heat on his face, and behind his eyes he felt the wolf, running through snow-shadowed trees, scenting men and deer and fear. Two bodies, one mind stretched between them. It was exhilarating. It was terrifying. Jon tried to pull back, but the memory held him. The wolf's hunger surged, sharp and simple, and Jon nearly drowned in it. He tasted the thought of blood, and it was sweet. He smelled the weakness in prey, and it was a promise. The wolf wanted to run forever, to eat, to mate, to kill. The man's mind held it the way a rider holds a horse. Firm hand, steady seat. Not cruelty, mastery. The wolf found something in the woods. Enemy scouts, men with painted faces creeping close. The wolf circled, silent, and the man in the camp, Jon in the man, felt it. The scarred man's eyes opened. He spoke one word and 3 wolves rose as one and vanished into the trees like white smoke. Jon felt the wolves strike. Teeth, screams, hot blood against cold snow. He felt men dying through an animal's joy. He gagged, but there was no stomach. There was only mind. Enough, the raven's voice said, and there was steel in it now. The memory snapped back a fraction, and Jon found himself again in his own ghost-pale shape, watching. The scarred man lifted his head from the weirwood and looked straight at Jon, as if he could see him. The scarred man spoke, and though the words were old, the meaning landed with brutal clarity. A man who rides a beast must never forget he is a man. A man who forgets becomes meat. Jon's throat tightened. He thought of Ghost, of how easy it had been to lose himself in fur and fawn. He understood suddenly why the raven had dragged him here. Not to show him power, but to show him the cliff edge that came with it. The scarred man walked to the fire and began to chant. The men joined him. The wolves howled in harmony, not at the moon but at the tree. The sound made the forest itself seem to listen. Jon felt the weirwood's roots twist beneath the camp like veins. The raven whispered again, softer. This is the first lesson. Hold without drowning. Command without becoming. The crimson leaves fell. They turned into snow. Jon felt himself yanked backward, as if a hook had caught his spine. The forest, the old camp, the crimson leaves. All of it peeled away, replaced by stone and smoke and candle tallow. He was not in his body, but he was close to it. Close enough to feel the cold that gathered around it like a shroud. Through the eyes of a raven perched high in the rafters, Jon watched Davos Seaworth stand over him. Davos looked older than he had even a day ago, as if the night had carved new lines into his face. His missing fingers curled and uncurled at his side. He stared down at Jon's pale face with something like fury, something like grief. Not like this, Davos muttered, and the words were a prayer he didn't believe anyone was listening to. Melisandre of Asshai stood opposite him, her red gown a wound in the gray room. The torchlight found the sharp angles of her face and made her eyes look deeper than any human's. She did not look at Jon's body the way Davos did. She looked at it the way a gambler looks at dice, calculating, hungry for a result. He is not gone, she said softly, as if tasting the words. Davos's head snapped up. What do you mean, not gone? His voice was rough. He's dead. I saw him. I carried him. Melisandre's gaze drifted to the corner where Ghost paced, silent as smoke. The direwolf's fur was stained at the shoulder, where a blade had grazed him. His eyes were bright and restless, his body tense with a rage that had no place to spend itself. Every few steps he stopped and pressed his nose to the air, as if scenting something no one else could. The wolf knows, Melisandre murmured. Davos followed her gaze and swallowed. That thing scares the men, he said. They're talking about killing it. They will not, Melisandre replied, and there was a certainty in her tone that made even Davos flinch. Not if they wish to see the dawn. Davos's jaw worked. You said Stannis Baratheon was the dawn, he spat. You said he was the one. You said. I saw what I saw, Melisandre said, and for an instant her composure cracked, revealing exhaustion beneath. And I was wrong. Or, I misread. Fire shows truths, but it does not show the whole of them. Davos stared at her as if he wanted to hit her. He did not. He rubbed at his face instead. What are you going to do? He asked, hoarse. Melisandre moved closer to Jon's body. Her hands hovered above the still chest, above the black wool soaked and crusted with dried blood. I will ask the Lord of Light, she said. Davos let out a bitter laugh. And if he doesn't answer? Then we will have a corpse, Melisandre said, and the wall will have one less man who could have held it. Outside the door, muffled voices argued.
Jon recognisa se alize turnas sharptuna, buen marsh suyen insistanza.
The watch was splitting itself open from within, knives and fear doing what wildlings and others had failed to do. Jon tried to reach through the raven's throat, tried to scream, tried to force sound into the world. Only a croak came out. Ghost stopped pacing. His head lifted, ears pricked. His gaze snapped to the rafters, to the raven. For a heartbeat, Jon felt the direwolf's mind brush against the birds. A flash of white fury and desperate loyalty. Jon, Jon. The name was not spoken. It was felt. Jon's mind surged toward Ghost like a drowning man toward a rope. The direwolf's presence was hot, alive, fierce. Jon tried to climb into it fully, to take shelter there as he had in the yard. But something held him back. A thin tether that pulled at him from deeper in the roots of the world. The raven. Not yet. That ancient voice whispered. and Jon felt the command like iron. Not yet. Ghost's growl rose, low and threatening, as if he resented even that. He padded to the table and shoved his nose against Jon's limp hand, breathing hard, filling the room with the scent of wolf and snow. Davos watched, eyes wet and angry. He knew him, Davos said quietly. That beast. He knew him like a brother. Melisandre's lips parted as if she wanted to say something kind, but kindness did not belong to her. She reached under her gown and drew out a small pouch. She spilled powder into her palm, dark, glittering grains, and threw it into the brazier. The fire flared green for a heartbeat, then snapped back to orange, licking the air hungrily. Melisandre began to chant. The words were foreign, old, harsh. The flames bent toward her as if listening. Shadows on the walls stretched and writhed. Jon felt the heat as a distant pulse. He felt it reach for him across whatever gap held him between worlds. Fire had always frightened him, not because it burned, but because it ate. It did not take and leave. It took and changed. Melisandre's voice climbed higher. "Lord of Light," she whispered. "Show me what must be done." The flame answered, not with speech, but with vision. Jon saw it too, through the raven's eye and through something deeper. He saw snow falling upward. He saw a black river turning to glass. He saw a pale face with blue eyes that did not blink. And behind it all, faint but growing, he felt the beat of enormous wings. The heat became cold again. Jon's awareness slid away from stone and torchlight and into a place that smelled of dust and sun-baked rock. He stood in a tower room where the air was thick and still, where the light came in pale and harsh through narrow windows. The walls were stained with old smoke. The floor was littered with petals, crushed and browning. A bed sat in the center of the room like an altar. Lyanna Stark lay on it, her face gray with pain, her hair plastered to her forehead with sweat. Blood soaked the sheets beneath her. Too much blood, blood that should have belonged inside her body. Her eyes were open, wild and fever-bright. She clutched something to her chest, something wrapped in cloth. Eddard Stark knelt beside her, and the sight of him struck Jon like a blow. Ned Stark looked young here, younger than the man Jon had known, but there was already a heaviness in his brow, a grief that had not yet settled into years. His hand trembled as he reached toward Lyanna, as if afraid to touch her and make her break. "Promise me," Lyanna whispered, voice thin as paper. Ned's mouth opened. No sound came out at first. Then, "I promise," he said, and the words came out like a wound. Lyanna's fingers tightened on the bundle. "He can't," she breathed. "They'll kill him. Robert." She coughed, and blood spotted her lips. Tears slid down her cheeks, cutting clean lines through grime. "Promise me, Ned." Ned leaned closer, pressing his forehead to hers. "I promise," he said again, and this time his voice broke. Jon stared at the bundle. He could not move. He could not breathe. His mind tried to reject what his eyes were seeing, as if denial could stop the world from turning. Lyanna's gaze flicked toward the bundle. "His name," she whispered. Her lips shaped a word that did not reach Jon's ears. The sound was swallowed by the room, by the tree, by the weight of history. Ned's hand hovered over the cloth and hesitated. Then he pulled it back gently. The newborn's face was red and scrunched, eyes shut tight, mouth working as if searching for milk. Tiny fingers opened and closed like pale petals. A tuft of dark hair clung to the scalp. Jon's stomach turned to ice. He had seen his own face in reflections, in water, in polished steel. He had never seen it like this, not in this helpless, raw form. He looked at Lyanna again, at the stark blood in her face. Then he looked at Ned, at the stark grief in his eyes. And behind it all, he felt something else. Something like heat under ash. A presence brushed Jon's mind, vast and distant. He turned his head and the tower room's shadows seemed to ripple, as if something enormous passed in the far sky of the world. The three-eyed raven's voice slid into Jon's thoughts like a knife sliding into a sheath. "Blood is a key," it murmured. But keys do not open doors by themselves. A hand must turn them. Jon's voice shook. Rhaegar Targaryen, he whispered, and the name tasted like betrayal and truth all at once. Bran Stark's presence flickered beside him, unseen but felt. Jon sensed the boy's sadness, his quiet certainty. Bran did not speak. He didn't need to. Jon's mind raced, trying to knit his life into a shape that made sense.
Ned Stark's coldness. Catelyn Stark's resentment.
The half-hidden looks. The silence that had sat between them like a wall. All of it had been built to protect this child on a blood-soaked bed. Jon's chest tightened, and for the first time since his knives went in, he felt something that was not anger. He felt grief. Lyanna's eyes fluttered. She looked straight at Ned, but Jon had the mad certainty she looked through him too, as if the tree made her see what would come. "Promise," she breathed one last time. Ned's hand closed around hers. "I promise," he said, and the words became a chain that would bind him until death. The vision wavered. Jon's ghost hands clenched. "Why show me this?" he demanded, voice cracking. "Why now?" The three-eyed raven's red eye opened in his mind like a wound. "Because you were born of ice and fire," it said. "Because the sky will need a rider who can hold both." The bundle stirred. The baby's mouth opened in a silent cry. Jon felt, far away, the beat of enormous wings again. Closer now, louder, like thunder. The tower dissolved into roots. The weirwood net did not move like a road. It moved like thought, here, then there, then both at once. Jon opened his awareness and found Castle Black again, as if he had simply turned his head. A raven perched on the wall's lip, claws gripping ice. Its feathers shivered in the wind. Through its eyes, Jon saw the yard below. Men in black moving like ants in a white world, torches smoking, breath steaming. The place that had been his home looked hostile now, alien, as if it belonged to someone else. Bowen Marsh stood near the armory, shoulders hunched. His face pinched as if he had tasted something sour. Ser Alliser Thorne paced in front of him, cloak snapping, his mouth a thin line of contempt. Around them the watch gathered in uneasy knots, men watching men, hands close to swords, suspicion thick as frost. "They'll come for us," Bowen Marsh hissed, voice carrying up in the wind. "The wildlings, the Queen's men, the Red Witch. They'll do what we tell them," Ser Alliser Thorne snapped. "We did what had to be done." The Lord Commander broke his vows. He brought the enemy through the gate. He brought the living, someone muttered. Ser Alliser's head whirled toward the sound. The man who had spoken stepped back, eyes lowering.
Se alises lip kurlat.
"You'll hold your tongue," he said, "or I'll cut it out for you." Jon's mind surged with anger. The raven's claws tightened on ice. He wanted to dive down, to rake Ser Alliser's eyes out, to tear Bowen Marsh's throat the way Ghost would. He could feel Ghost below, too, white shape in shadow, muscles coiled, watching, listening, a beast held back by loyalty and the threat of steel. Jon reached toward Ghost instinctively, and the direwolf's mind answered like a flame. He felt the wolf's need to kill. He felt the wolf's grief. He felt, beneath it, a stubborn refusal to leave Jon behind. Jon. The name again, a pulse of devotion. In that devotion, Jon found a strange anchor. He held to it and watched. Bowen Marsh drew himself up. "We must act quickly," he said. "Davos Seaworth is keeping the body. Melisandre of Asshai is with him. If they try..." His voice faltered on the word that would not become real. Ser Alliser's eyes narrowed. "Then we take the corpse," he said bluntly. "We burn it. We put an end to it." A murmur rose, uneasy. Not all the men wanted that. Some looked at the ground. Some looked toward the king's tower as if hoping someone else would decide for them. Jon felt a tug inside himself, a dark curiosity, a hunger like the one he had tasted in the wolf. He could see their faces. He could see fear in them, and guilt, and the brittle righteousness men used to protect themselves from what they had done. He wondered what would happen if he reached into them, if he pushed. A whisper curled through his thoughts. Not the ravens this time, but something older and meaner. You could make them kneel. You could make them speak. You could make them suffer. Jon recoiled from his own thought. He had seen what warging did to beasts. He had felt how easy it was to become the thing you rode, to climb into a man's mind. That was a violation deeper than any blade. The three-eyed raven's presence brushed him, cold and warning. "Do not," it whispered. Jon's jaw clenched. "They killed me." "Yes," the raven said, "and you will answer them, but not by becoming what the others already are." Jon did not understand, but the warning held weight. He pulled back, forcing his mind to remain in the raven, to remain an observer. The raven shifted its wings, feathers rattling. Below, Ser Alliser Thorne turned and looked up, straight toward the raven. For an instant Jon felt, impossibly, that Ser Alliser's gaze met his.
Se alises mo twista.
"Damn birds," he muttered. The raven croaked. Jon felt the sound scrape his own throat like a dull blade. He could not speak. He could not breathe. He could only watch as men began to move, gathering, forming a crude intent like a fist. Ghost's lips peeled back from his teeth. Jon's mind surged toward him. Not yet. The tether in the roots pulled. Not yet. The sky above the wall was the color of bruises. Somewhere beyond the world, thunder beat its wings again. The world snapped open like a furnace door. Heat struck Jon so hard it felt like a physical blow. For an instant he thought he had returned to life and been thrown into flame. But when he tried to gasp, the air tasted of dust and salt and hot stone, not smoke. He stood ghost-formed, in a place where the ground was black and broken, where the sky shimmered with a pale, cruel sun. Below him a city sprawled, its walls pale, its towers sharp. He knew it only from tales. Meereen, the far city of slavers and pyramids. On a ridge of dark rock stood Daenerys Targaryen. She was smaller than the songs made her. Not a towering queen, not a statue. A young woman in leather and pale cloth, her hair braided. Her face set with a stubbornness Jon recognized instantly because it was the same stubbornness he carried in his own bones. Her eyes, purple in the harsh light, looked out across the city as if daring it to defy her. Beside her crouched a dragon. Drogon's scales were black as night, but in the sun they held hints of red, like embers buried in coal. Smoke curled from his nostrils with every slow breath. His wings were folded, but even folded they seemed too big for the world. He was not merely an animal. He was a storm given flesh. He moved his head, and the air around him seemed to bend. A man stood near Daenerys, bearded, armor-worn, eyes fixed on the dragon with both devotion and fear. Jorah Mormont, Jon realized, and the knowledge came not from himself but from the weirwood's vast memory. Another figure lingered at the edge of the ridge, smaller, walking with the careful caution of a man who knew how quickly a wrong word could become death. Tyrion Lannister. Jon stared, and something in him tightened. He did not know why the raven had shown him this, not yet, but the reason sat in front of him in black scales and smoke. The three-eyed raven's voice slid into his mind, colder than any snow. "Touch it," it commanded. Jon's entire being recoiled. "No. You want to ride the sky," the raven said. "You want to hold the world together when it breaks. Touch it." Jon's teeth clenched. "That's a dragon." "Yes," the raven said, as if the word were a door. "And dragons do not belong to anyone. Not truly. Not even to her." Daenerys turned her head slightly, as if she sensed something. Drogon's eyes, dark, burning, shifted too, and for a heartbeat Jon felt that gaze graze him. It was like standing beneath an avalanche and realizing it could fall. Jon forced his ghost hands to rise. He reached toward Drogon's mind the way he reached toward ghosts, gently, cautiously, seeking the shape of it. He found fire, not metaphorical fire, not warmth. Fire as a living thought, vast and ancient and hungry. Drogon's mind was not simple. It was not the clean instincts of a wolf. It was layered. Pride, rage, possessiveness, curiosity. threaded through with something that felt like memory older than Jon's entire world. Jon's mind touched it and flared. Suddenly, he was not on the ridge. He was inside a throat that breathed smoke, inside a chest that held a furnace heart. He saw the world through eyes that did not blink. The city below looked like a toy. Men were ants. Walls were brittle. Everything could be burned. A hunger surged through him so immense it made Ghost's hunger feel like a child's whim. Burn, take, rule, fly. Jon tried to pull back. Drogon's mind pressed in response. Curious, aggressive. A predator sensing something unfamiliar in its territory. The dragon's thoughts curled around Jon like hot chains. Who are you? Jon's sense of self began to blur at the edges, melting in the heat. He felt his own name slipping. He felt his own past sliding away like wax. He felt a terrifying possibility. That he could become dragon, that he could forget man forever. In the distant real world, Daenerys stiffened. Drogon lifted his head, nostrils flaring as if scenting something. Smoke poured out. Yora stepped forward, hand half raised. Tyrion's eyes widened, his mouth opening. Jon screamed, inside his mind where sound was thought, and forced himself to cling to the one thing that was not heat. Ghost. He grasped the direwolf's presence in the far north like grabbing a rope across an ocean. White fur, cold air, the taste of snow, the fierce, stubborn loyalty of a wolf who would not let go. Jon used it to rip himself free. He snapped back into his ghost shape on the ridge, trembling, as if cold despite the heat. Drogon's head swung toward the empty air where Jon stood. The dragon's eyes narrowed. A low rumble built in his chest. Daenerys took a step forward. Drogon, she said sharply, voice steady, but there was a tremor under it. She placed her hand against the dragon's neck, fingers splayed on hot scales. The dragon's rumble eased, but his eyes did not stop searching. Jon stared at Daenerys' hand on the dragon and felt, with sudden clarity, that blood alone did not make her safe. It made her familiar. Familiarity was not the same as control. The three-eyed raven's voice returned, calm as winter. That, it said, is what you will face. Fire will try to eat you. If you cannot hold yourself, you will be devoured. Jon's throat tightened. Why? He whispered. Why show me this now? Because the dead will reach for dragons, the raven said. And the living will need someone who can hold them from the inside. The heat wavered. The ridge dissolved into roots. Jon's ghost hands shook as if he'd truly been burned. Jon felt the pull back to Castle Black like being dragged through ice. He slammed into the raven again. Feathers, wind, height, and then deeper still, as if the world demanded he choose. The king's tower room came into view below, torchlight flickering through cracks. Jon could sense the room without seeing it now, like a blind man who knows the shape of his own house. He could taste fear in the air. Men crowded the doorway, black brothers packed shoulder to shoulder. Some clutched swords. Some clutched nothing but their own dread. Ser Alliser Thorne was not among them. Bowen Marsh was not among them. They had stayed out, unwilling to witness whatever madness the Red Woman planned. Davos Seaworth stood near the table, face hard as stone. Ghost was beside him, head low, fur bristling, hackles raised. The direwolf's eyes were fixed on Melisandre of Asshai with a hatred so pure it made Jon's mind flinch. Melisandre stood over Jon's body. She had stripped off her heavy outer layers, leaving her in a thinner red gown that clung to her like skin. Her hair hung loose around her shoulders, dark in the torchlight, and for the first time Jon saw something fragile in her posture. Not weakness, but the strained focus of a woman about to step onto a knife's edge. She placed both hands on Jon's chest. Her palms were warm. Jon felt that warmth like a distant memory, faint but real. For a heartbeat, he could almost feel his own skin again. Melisandre began to speak. The words were not loud. They did not need to be. They filled the room anyway, pressing against stone and flesh like heat pressing against glass. The brazier flared. Shadows leapt and twisted, tall and hungry. The air smelled of salt and smoke and something older, burned herbs, ancient oils. Davos watched with eyes that did not blink. His hands trembled slightly, though he held them clenched. Ghost's low growl rose into a howl. The sound hit Jon like a spear. It was grief and rage and pleading all at once. It shook the room. Men flinched, some crossing themselves, some whispering prayers. Jon's mind surged toward Ghost, desperate. The direwolf's presence answered like a door thrown open, offering cold and loyalty and the simple clarity of a beast that knew what it loved. Jon tried to climb into Ghost fully, to use him as a bridge into his own body. He felt the wolf's muscles tense, felt his lungs draw in air, felt his paws dig into stone. Then the tether in the roots tightened. The three-eyed raven's voice came, soft but absolute. "Not through the wolf," it whispered. "Through the breath." Jon's mind stumbled. What does that mean? The raven's read, I burned in the dark behind his thoughts. "You have been between," it said. "Between man and beast. Between life and death. Between ice and fire. If you return whole. Not half wolf. Not half ghost." Jon's fear flared. He could feel his body on the table like an empty house. He could feel its stillness, its coldness. He could feel the weight of death settled on it like snow. To step back into it felt impossible, like stepping into a frozen lake and willing it not to drown you. Melisandre's chanting quickened. The flames in the brazier bent toward Jon's body. Shadows crawled up the walls like living things. Davos's voice broke the chant, rough and furious. "If you've ever done a good thing in your life," he muttered, not to Melisandre but to the world, "do it now." Melisandre's eyes snapped open, wide, glassy, fierce. She pressed her hands harder against Jon's chest. "Come back," she whispered, and the words were not ritual now. They were a demand, a plea. "Come back." Jon felt something stir, not in his mind, in his body, a faint twitch in dead muscle, like a spark in wet wood. His chest did not rise. His lips did not part. But the emptiness shifted, as if acknowledging the possibility of being filled. Jon thrust himself toward it. The first attempt was like slamming into a locked door. He hit the boundary of flesh and bounced back into nothing, disoriented. Panic surged. The room below blurred. Ghost's howl rose again, frantic. Jon tried again. He aimed not with will but with memory. The taste of cold air in his lungs. The ache in his limbs after a long ride. The weight of a sword in his hand. He remembered pain. Because pain meant he had nerves, meant he had flesh, meant he had been alive. He used that memory like a key. He pressed himself into his body, forcing mind into meat, forcing thought into bone. Something cracked. Jon felt sudden, brutal cold, the way a man feels when he wakes in snow with no clothes. He felt the stone beneath him through the table. He felt the stiff crust of dried blood on his skin. He felt Melisandre's hands, hot as coals, pressing him down and pulling him up at once. He could not breathe. His throat was frozen shut. His lungs were empty and would not fill. The three-eyed raven's voice was in his skull, sharp as a whip. "Breathe," it commanded. Jon's mouth opened. Air tore into him like fire. His chest convulsed. He sucked in breath so hard it hurt. Pain exploded through his ribs. His eyes flew open. The room swam in torchlight. Faces lurched into focus. Davos Seaworth's shocked, fierce face. Melisandre of Asshai's eyes wide with something like triumph and terror. Black brothers backing away as if the dead had risen to bite them. Ghost's howl turned into a sound Jon had never heard from him before. Something like relief. Jon's lungs burned. His heart hammered once, twice, like a fist on a door. He was alive, but the world was not the same. He could feel the ravens on the wall as if they were extra fingers. He could feel the roots under the ground as if they were veins connected to his own. He could feel Ghost not as a companion beside him, but as a presence braided into his bones. Melisandre stumbled back, breathless, as if she had run a great distance. Her lips moved soundlessly for a moment. Then she whispered, "St. And he returned." Davos stepped forward, eyes shining. "Jon Snow," he said, and his voice cracked on the name. Jon tried to speak. His throat rasped. His voice came out hoarse, raw. He managed. His mind flickered, and he saw, as if from above, Bowen Marsh and Ser Alliser Thorne outside, gathering men, coming for the door. He sat up, pain flaring, and the movement felt too smooth for a man who had been dead. He looked at Davos. He looked at Melisandre. He looked at Ghost. Then he said, very softly, with a certainty that did not come from prophecy but from roots and ravens and the cold lesson of the tree, "Let them in." The door opened with a groan of hinges that sounded like the wall itself complaining. Ser Alliser Thorne came first, as if courage meant leading. His sword was in his hand, and his eyes were hard. Bowen Marsh followed, face tight, his dagger visible at his belt. Behind them came a cluster of black brothers. Men Jon had eaten with, fought with, trusted. Their faces were pale. Some looked angry, some looked sick. They stepped into the room and stopped. Jon Snow stood in the doorway to the inner chamber, bareheaded, hair loose, skin pale as milk against the dried blood staining his neck and chest. The torchlight caught the hollows under his eyes, the bruised shadow of death that still clung to him. Ghost sat at his feet like a white statue carved from winter, lips curled back to show teeth. For a long moment no one spoke. The only sound was the crackle of flame and the faint, distant moan of wind outside. Then Ser Alliser found his voice. Came out brittle. "This is witchcraft," he said, and he tried to make disgust sound like strength. "This is." Jon's gaze fixed on him. Not the warm, human gaze Ser Alliser remembered, but something deeper, steadier. Jon looked like a man who had seen beyond fear and come back with it pinned under his boot. "You killed me," Jon said. His voice was hoarse, but the words were clear. Bowen Marsh's eyes flicked to the blood on Jon's throat, to the stiff crust where knives had gone in. His face tightened as if he might vomit. "We did what we had to," Bowen said, but the words were weak. "You broke your vows." "You." "I kept them," Jon said.
Se alises lip kurlat.
"You brought wildlings through the gate." "I brought the living," Jon replied, and there was a hint of something sharp in his tone now, something that made even Davos shift. "You were afraid." Bowen's jaw worked. "We were protecting the Night's Watch." Jon's eyes did not leave Bowen's. "From what?" he asked softly. Silence. Jon could feel them, all of them, not in their minds, he did not push there, but in their bodies. He could smell their fear, taste it on the air, see it in the twitch of fingers around sword hilts. He could hear their hearts, uneven, stumbling. He could see, through a raven's eye above, how their shadows sprawled on the floor like dark stains. He could also feel Ghost's fury like a heat at his side, urging him to tear. Jon placed a hand on Ghost's head, fingers sinking into thick fur. The dire wolf trembled under his touch, but he did not move. Jon felt the wolf's desire to kill and held it, not crushing it, not indulging it, but holding it the way a rider holds a nervous horse. Ser Alliser Thorne took one step forward, as if trying to reclaim the room. "You're dead," he spat. "You're Jon moved, not fast, not dramatic, just a simple step forward, closing the distance. But the men flinched as if struck. The air around Jon seemed to shift, as if the room itself leaned toward him. Ravens in the rafters stirred, wings rustling, and the sound made the men's eyes snap upward in fear. Jon stopped an arm's length from Ser Alliser. He looked at the older man, at the hatred that had shaped Ser Alliser for years, at the pride that would not bend. Jon could have killed him. He could have ordered Ghost to do it, could have watched white teeth sink into black throat. The thought came easy, frighteningly easy. He felt the edge of that cliff. He stepped back from it. "You will be judged," Jon said quietly. "Not by me alone."
Ser alizir barke da arslaug.
"By who? The wildlings? The Red Witch? The boy king you served before?" "By the Watch," Jon said, and his voice carried. By the men who still remember what honor is. Bowen Marsh's eyes darted. No, he said, panic creeping into his tone. No, this is madness. You can't. Jon raised his hand. The gesture was small, but at it, Ghost rose with a low, vibrating growl that filled the room like thunder. Several men stumbled back, boots scraping stone. One dropped his sword with a clang. Jon did not need to warg into Ghost to make it happen. The bond was enough. The men saw it in Ghost's eyes. Not just animal rage, but something watching through the animal. They saw Jon's will. Davos stepped forward beside Jon, voice hard. "You'll lay down your weapons," Davos said. "Or you'll feed that wolf." Ser Aliser's face went pale with fury. He lifted his sword. Jon watched the blade rise and felt something cold settle inside him. He remembered the scarred man under the weirwood, his lesson in control. He remembered Drogon's fire, how it tried to eat him. He remembered the raven's warning about becoming what he hated. He breathed in. He let the roots beneath the castle whisper to him. He let the ravens above show him every angle. He let Ghost's fury hum without letting it rule. Then he said, almost gently, "Put it down, Ser Aliser Thorn."
Se Alises suort tremblat.
For a heartbeat, Jon saw it clearly. Not magic forcing Ser Aliser's arm, not mind control, not violation. Something simpler. The sheer weight of death and return, the shattering of certainty. Ser Aliser had killed Jon Snow. Ser Aliser had watched him bleed into the snow. Ser Aliser had believed the world would stay obedient to steel. Now the dead stood in front of him and spoke.
Se Alises fingers lusanat.
The sword clattered to the floor. A sound like a sob escaped someone in the crowd. Bowen Marsh's dagger slipped from his belt and fell after it, as if his body had decided before his mind. Jon's gaze swept the men, each face a story of fear and regret. "Bind them," he said to Davos. Davos nodded once, grim. Men moved forward hesitantly, taking ropes, stripping weapons. Ser Aliser's eyes burned with hatred, but he did not fight. Bowen Marsh looked broken. Melisandre watched from the back of the room, her expression unreadable. Firelight danced in her eyes, and for a moment Jon wondered if she saw him or if she saw what he could become. Jon turned to Ghost and rested his forehead briefly against the direwolf's skull. The wolf's breath was hot against Jon's cold skin. "We are not done," Jon felt, not from the raven now but from something deep and wild inside himself. Jon lifted his head. He could feel the wall. He could feel the north. He could feel, faint and terrible, the cold mind beyond the snow watching. He had returned. Now he would rule the space between. Morning in the north did not arrive like a blessing. It arrived like a reluctant compromise, a pale thinning of the dark that never truly warmed the world. Jon stood atop the wall and watched the horizon bleed gray into white. The wind cut through him. It found the places death had touched and made them ache. He pulled his cloak tighter, but the cold was not only outside. It lived in him now, a memory of the place he had been. Ghost stood at his side, silent, steady, a white shape against endless ice. The direwolf's eyes tracked movement far below. Black brothers dragging ropes, wildlings gathering in wary clusters, men moving like pieces on a board that no longer belonged to them. Ravens circled above Jon's head. Not one or two, but dozens, their wings beating in ragged rhythm. They did not scatter when he looked at them. They watched him. Jon could feel their attention like fingers on the back of his neck. He could also feel the roots, not here on the wall. There were no trees on this frozen spine, but beneath it, deep in the earth where old weirwoods once stood, where stumps still remembered being alive. Their memory ran like veins beneath the snow, threading the world together. Jon's mind brushed against it unintentionally now, the way a man brushes against a blade he carries every day. Familiar, dangerous. He closed his eyes. Behind his lids, he saw too much. The yard where he had fallen, the tower room where he had gasped back into life, the crimson leaves of ancient camps, the black scale of a dragon's mind. He saw Lyanna Stark's blood on sheets and Ned Stark's promise hardening into a lifetime of silence. He opened his eyes again and stared north. The haunted forest lay beyond the wall like a dark sea, treetops swaying under snow. Farther still, the land fell into whiteness. Somewhere in that whiteness marched the dead. Jon did not see them with his eyes. He felt them. A cold presence pressed at the edge of his awareness, faint but unmistakable, like frost creeping along the inside of a window. It was not the three-eyed raven. It was something else. Something that did not whisper through roots and leaves but through silence, through absence, through the dead space where life should have been. Jon's fingers tightened on the parapet. His breath came out in a steady cloud. "He's there," he murmured, not sure if he spoke to Ghost or to himself. Ghost's ears pricked. The direwolf's gaze turned north too, and a low, rumbling growl began in his chest. Jon felt the growl in his bones. He felt the wolf's instinct, its readiness to fight. He also felt something beyond instinct. A tension, a warning, as if Ghost sensed a predator that did not belong to the natural world. Behind Jon, boots crunched on ice. Melisandre of Asshai came up the steps, her red gown a flicker of color against endless pale. The wind tugged at her hair. Her face looked drawn, older than it had the night before. Whatever she had done, it had taken something from her. She stopped a few paces behind him and did not come closer. Jon could feel her watching, could feel her fear braided with fascination. "The Lord of Light showed me snow," Melisandre said softly. "Snow and darkness. And you." Jon did not turn. "I didn't come back for your god," he replied. Melisandre's breath fogged. "No," she admitted. "You came back for your own war." Jon's jaw tightened. "I came back because I wasn't finished." Melisandre stepped closer, careful, as if approaching a wild animal. "When I touched you," she said, voice trembling with honesty, "it was like touching ice that remembers fire. I thought I was bringing back a man." Jon finally turned his head. His eyes met hers. He did not know what she saw there. He only knew what he felt. The weirwood net humming under the world, ravens circling overhead, Ghost steady at his side, and far north a cold mind pressing like a thumb against a bruise. "I am a man," Jon said, and he meant it like a vow. "But I've been shown what waits if I forget that." Melisandre's lips parted as if she wanted to ask what he had seen. She did not. She looked north instead, her expression tightening. "The darkness comes," she whispered. "Yes," Jon said. A raven landed on the parapet near his hand. His eye was bright, too aware. Jon felt the three-eyed raven's presence stir faintly through it, like a distant heartbeat. Not a command this time. Not yet. Just a reminder. You are watched, and you are needed. Jon reached out and let his fingers brush the raven's feathers. The bird did not flinch, cocked its head, studying him. Ghost nudged Jon's hip, a firm shove, grounding him in fur and weight and living breath. Jon rested his hand on Ghost's neck and felt the warmth there, real and stubborn. He looked north again. He could not see the Night King, not with his eyes. But he could feel that cold mind moving, testing, learning. He had touched fire and survived. Now he felt ice reaching back. Jon understood with sudden clarity that this was no longer only a war of swords. It was a war of wills, of minds, of things that could ride other things and turn them into weapons. If the dead could reach for dragons, then the living needed someone who could hold dragons without being eaten by them. Jon's breath steadied. He let the wind cut him. He let the cold bite. He let the vastness of the task settle onto his shoulders like a cloak heavier than any wool. Then he spoke to the wall, to the ravens, to the roots, to Ghost, to the distant darkness that thought itself inevitable. "Come," Jon said quietly, voice carrying into the pale morning. "If you want what breath makes, you'll have to take it from me." He left the king's tower with the taste of smoke still clinging to the back of his throat, as if death had branded him with fire and refused to let him forget it. Men looked away when he passed. Others stared too long, their faces pale and pinched, as if afraid he might crumble into ash if they blinked. Jon Snow did not speak to them. He could feel their fear in the set of their shoulders, could hear the uneven stutter of their hearts, and the knowledge made him oddly calm. Fear was honest. It did not pretend. At the yard he stopped, turning his face into the wind. The cold struck him hard and clean, and he welcomed it. It was the only thing that felt familiar. Ghost moved at his heel, silent as the falling snow. The direwolf's presence hummed in Jon's mind like a taut string. It would have been easy to lean into it and let the animal steadiness carry him. Jon refused. He did not want to live half in fur again. He had come back as himself, and he would stay that way until the world forced him otherwise. Davos Seaworth joined him, boots crunching. "They're bound," Davos said, his breath fogged. "Ser Alliser Thorne, Bowen Marsh, the rest. The men are shouting about what to do with them." Jon's gaze drifted toward the gate. He could see it without turning, as if the wall itself carried sight for him now. "Keep them alive," Jon said. "For now." Davos studied him. "For now," he echoed, cautious. Jon's eyes narrowed slightly. "You think I'll hang them?" Davos did not flinch from the truth of it. "I think you've got every right," he said. "I also think the wall needs men. And if the dead are coming." "They are," Jon said. Davos fell silent at the certainty in Jon's tone. The wind blew harder. Ravens shifted on the battlements overhead, their claws scraping ice. The gate groaned open. 3 figures stepped through, cloaks heavy with travel, the scent of horse and old roads clinging to them. The first was Brienne of Tarth, tall and broad-shouldered, her pale hair bound tight, her face set with a grim determination. Beside her walked a boy, Podrick Payne, eyes wide, hand near his sword. Between them, wrapped in dark furs like armor, was Sansa Stark. Jon's breath caught, not from cold but from the sudden violence of memory. Winterfell's yard. A girl laughing as she spun beneath falling snow. A wolf's howl in the night. Then the years between, years of ravens and deaths and distance. Sansa Stark stopped a few paces away. Her eyes found Jon's, older eyes now, eyes that had learned what men did when they had power and no mercy. She looked at his face as if searching for the boy she remembered. She found something else, something colder. "Jon," she said, and her voice broke around the name. He stepped toward her before he could stop himself. For a heartbeat he was back in Winterfell, a bastard boy staring at a trueborn sister and wishing he could belong. "Sansa Stark," he said, and the formality tasted wrong in his mouth. Sansa swallowed. "I heard you were dead." "I was," Jon said. Brienne of Tarth shifted, uneasy, as if she had not expected honesty so blunt. Podrick Payne stared at Jon's throat where the scars sat like pale, ugly necklaces. Sansa's gaze flicked to those scars and her face tightened with quiet fury. "Who did it?" Jon looked back toward Castle Black, toward the men in black who did not know what they were anymore. "My brothers," he said. "My watch." Sansa's jaw clenched. "Then you don't owe them anything." Jon felt the old oath in his bones like a chain. He remembered speaking the words beneath the weirwood, feeling them settle onto him like iron. He remembered the pride of it, the purpose. He also remembered bleeding into snow while those words meant nothing to men with knives. "I died for them," Jon said quietly. "That was my last duty." Sansa stepped closer. The wind tugged at her hair. "Winterfell is mine," she said, voice steady now. "Winterfell is ours. Ramsay Bolton has it. He has our home. He has..." Her voice faltered, and in the falter Jon heard old wounds screaming. "He has done things I can't." She swallowed hard and looked away for an instant. "I came because I have no one else." Jon felt Ghost shift beside him, felt the direwolf's low rumble at the name Ramsay Bolton, as if hatred could be inherited through blood and bond. Jon looked back at Sansa, at the stark courage under her fear. Somewhere far beneath the earth, roots stirred. Somewhere above, ravens cried, as if laughing at the smallness of human pain beside what was coming. "I have people," Jon said. He turned his head slightly, taking in the wildlings camped near the wall. Tormund Giantsbane's tall shape, the hard faces, the hungry eyes. "And I have a war." Sansa's eyes sharpened. "Then fight it with me." Jon's fingers curled around the edge of his cloak. He felt the weight of it, the black wool, the vows stitched into every thread. He remembered the three-eyed raven's cold voice. "You are not yours anymore." He remembered Bran Stark's quiet eyes. "You're still Jon Snow." Jon reached up and unclasped the cloak. The metal clasp was cold against his fingers. He pulled the cloak off and let it fall into the snow. A hush spread through the yard like frost. Jon did not look at the men watching. He looked at Sansa Stark and said, with a voice that made no room for argument, "I'm going home." They rode south beneath a sky that never fully brightened. The world washed in grays and whites as if color had been drained by cold. The wildlings came in a rough tide behind them, furs and bone and hard laughter, their breath steaming. Tormund Giantsbane rode near the front, beard thick with frost, eyes gleaming with the joy of a fight promised. Jon had not asked him. Tormund had come anyway, as if loyalty was something you chose once and never questioned again. Sansa Stark rode beside Jon, her posture straight in the saddle as if she refused to let the North see her bend. She spoke little at first, keeping her pain folded tight beneath her cloak. But Jon felt it anyway, a low ache that did not leave her. He did not need the weirwood net to sense it. He had lived with grief too long not to recognize its shape. Davos Seaworth rode on Jon's other side, hands steady on the reins. He watched the wildlings with wary eyes and the northern road with the careful gaze of a man who had learned survival through attention. Brienne of Tarth and Podrick Payne followed, Brienne's sword hilt visible over her shoulder, her jaw set as if she had already decided what she would die for. Villages passed, half buried in drifts. Smoke rose from a few chimneys, thin and weak. In others, doors hung open and snow had claimed the hearths. Jon watched faces at windows, pale eyes peering out and then vanishing. They did not cheer. They did not call his name. The North had learned to keep its hope hidden, because hope was something men could steal. At night they made camp in the lee of hills or broken stone walls. Fires burned low, guarded against the wind. The wildlings told stories with laughter that sounded too loud in the empty dark. Northern men Jon had gathered, a handful at first, sat apart, their silence thick with suspicion. Jon listened to it all. He listened not only with his ears, but with ravens that perched in nearby trees and watched the world beyond the firelight. He listened through wolves that moved in the distance, shadows among snow-laden pines, their noses in the wind. It frightened him how natural it felt. He would close his eyes and let his mind brush the raven's sight, and suddenly the camp was a small glow in a sea of white, and the road ahead unrolled like a dark vein through the land. He could see hoofprints, wagons, scattered tracks. He could see men moving miles away, tiny specks against snow. He could see smoke from distant holdfasts and know whether it was new or old, whether it curled steady or blew wild. He did not push further. He did not climb into the beasts the way he once had by accident. He only touched. He only borrowed. Still, the temptation sat at the edge of every moment, whispering how easy it would be to take more. Sansa Stark noticed when Jon's eyes went distant. One night she watched him across the fire, her face lit by orange glow. "Where do you go?" she asked softly. "When you stop looking at us?" Jon blinked, pulling himself back from a raven perched in a nearby pine. The world snapped into human shape again. "Nowhere," he said. Sansa's gaze held him. "That's not true." Jon stared into the flames. He could see faces in them if he let himself. The three-eyed raven's red eye, Bran Stark's calm, Lyanna Stark bleeding on a bed. He tightened his jaw. "The North is loud," he said finally. "More than I remember." Davos Seaworth's brow furrowed. "Loud." Jon hesitated, searching for words that did not sound like madness. "I can feel things," he said. "The birds, the wolves, the trees." He glanced toward the dark line of forest beyond the camp. "It's like the land is watching." Brienne of Tarth shifted slightly, hand tightening on her cup. Podrick Payne's eyes widened. Sansa Stark's face did not change, but her fingers curled into her cloak. "You died," Sansa said quietly, "and you came back. Nothing about that is normal." Jon let out a humorless breath. "No," he agreed, "it isn't." The next day they reached Bear Island, and the cold there had teeth. The hall was small compared to Winterfell, but the men inside were hard as iron. Lyanna Mormont sat at the high seat, a child wrapped in furs too big for her face fierce enough to make grown men look away. Jon had expected a girl. He found a northern blade with a child's voice. "You have a wildling army," Lyanna Mormont said, eyes sharp, "and you come asking for bears to join wolves."
Sansa Stark lifted her chin.
"House Mormont swore to House Stark," she said. Lyanna's gaze flicked to Sansa. "House Stark is gone," she snapped. "I have seen what men do when they smell weakness. I have seen banners burn." Jon stepped forward. "I am not asking you to die for my name," he said. "I'm asking you to live for the North." Lyanna Mormont studied him. Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if she saw something behind his face. "You look like a man who has been in the ground," she said bluntly. A murmur rippled through the hall. Jon did not flinch. "I have," he said. Lyanna Mormont's mouth tightened. Then, unexpectedly, she nodded once. "Good," she said. "Then you know what we're fighting." She rose from the seat, small but commanding. "Bear Island stands with Jon Snow." The words hit the hall like a hammer. Men straightened. Jon felt something shift in the air. Not just hope, but a cautious awakening, like embers stirred under ash. Outside, ravens took flight, and Jon watched them go with a sense that the North itself was beginning to remember how to answer. Winterfell smelled different when Jon approached it, not with his horse's eyes, but with a wolf's nose miles away, riding the wind through the wolfswood. The scent of old stone and pine was still there, buried under snow, but it was fouled now by other things. Fierce sweat, fresh blood, smoke too thick and rancid. The sour stink of dogs fed on flesh. Ramsay Bolton's hounds moved through the yard like shadows with teeth. Jon saw it through a raven perched on a broken battlement. Ramsay Bolton standing beneath torchlight, dark leather clinging to him. His mouth curved in a half-smile that never reached his eyes. He held a knife casually, as if it were a quill. Men around him laughed too loudly. Others did not laugh at all. A body was dragged across the snow, headless, heavy, leaving a dark trail behind. Jon did not need to be told whose it was. The weirwood net carried memory like poison. Roose Bolton's quiet voice, his cold eyes gone. The North devoured its own monsters, and monsters grew from the feast. Ramsay Bolton's gaze lifted suddenly, as if he felt something. He looked up toward the raven. Jon's mind tightened. The raven's heart beat fast, fragile. Jon pulled back instinctively, unwilling to reveal himself. Ramsay Bolton laughed at something a man said and turned away, but the way he glanced around the yard made Jon's skin crawl. Ramsay Bolton did not fear the way most men feared. He hunted fear. He enjoyed it. In the camp south of Winterfell, Sansa Stark could not sleep. Jon knew it because he could hear the way her breath hitched in the dark, because he could smell her anxiety on the air when the wind shifted. She sat by the fire late one night while the others slept, eyes fixed on the flames as if she could burn her memories away. Jon sat beside her, silent. Ghost lay behind him, a warm weight, eyes half open. Sansa spoke without looking up. "He will not fight like an honorable man," she said. "He will not meet you in the field and accept defeat. He will take what he can, and then he will take more." Jon stared into the darkness beyond the firelight, where the forest waited. "I know," he said. Sansa's voice dropped lower. "If he is Rickon Stark," she whispered, and the name came out like a prayer and a curse. "He will use him." Jon's jaw tightened. Rickon Stark, wild boy, little wolf. Jon remembered him in Winterfell's halls, throwing tantrums, clinging to Shaggy Dog. He had not seen him in years, and yet the thought of him in Ramsay Bolton's hands made Jon's blood go cold. "I will bring him home," Jon said, though the words felt fragile. Sansa finally turned her face toward Jon. Firelight caught the sharp planes of her cheekbones, the shadow under her eyes. "Promise me," she said quietly. Jon's chest tightened. "Promise me." The words echoed across time, carrying Lyanna Stark's dying voice. Jon swallowed hard. "I can't promise what I can't control," he said. Sansa's mouth tightened, disappointment and fear flaring. "Then what can you promise?" Jon looked down at his hands, at the faint scars where death had marked him, and then he looked back into Sansa's eyes. "I can promise I won't stop," he said. "Not for fear, not for pain, not for him." Sansa stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded once, sharply, as if accepting a truth she hated. That night Jon pushed his mind outward, carefully, seeking wolves moving through the forest. He found them in a heartbeat, their minds simple and sharp. He rode their senses, smelling Winterfell's walls, seeing guard patrols, hearing the bark of hounds. He mapped the Bolton defenses in his head as if carving them into stone. The wolves slipped close to Winterfell's outer yard and froze. The hounds had caught their scent. Jon felt the tension in the wolves. Fear, readiness, the instinct to flee. He held them steady, urging them back, pulling away before the hounds could find them. For a moment, in the rush of it, he felt the edge of Ramsay Bolton's presence like a thorn. Not a mind to warg, but a human awareness, sharp, predatory, alert. It made Jon's skin crawl. He wanted to reach in. He wanted to crush that awareness, to make Ramsay Bolton feel what fear truly was. The temptation was a whisper in his skull. Jon shoved it away hard. He had not come back from death to become a thing that stole men's minds. There were monsters enough in the world. He would not add himself to their number. He pulled back into his own body and opened his eyes to the cold camp. Ghost watched him, silent as if judging. Jon exhaled slowly and stared northward through the trees, where Winterfell waited like a wounded beast. Soon, he told himself. Soon. Sleep took Jon like a fist closing around his skull. He was in the godswood before he realized he had left the camp. Snow muffled the world, turning sound into distant echoes. The weirwood stood ahead, its red leaves hanging heavy, dusted white. Its carved face watched him with eyes that bled sap. Jon's feet crunched softly as he approached. Ghost followed, silent, breath steaming. The air smelled of old wood and cold water. Jon placed his hand on the white bark. The world opened. Roots surged beneath him, not moving but remembered moving, veins carrying whispers older than kingdoms. He felt himself fall into that whisper and land in the cave again, in the place of ravens and bloodsap and ancient breath. Bran Stark sat in his chair, eyes steady. He looked at Jon with a calm that made Jon's skin prickle. Bran was not afraid of what Jon had become. That was what frightened Jon most. "You're going to take Winterfell," Bran said, as if stating the weather. Jon's mouth tightened. "Yes." Bran's gaze drifted past Jon, past the cave, past the world. "It won't be enough," Bran said softly. Jon felt anger flare. "Winterfell is my home." "And the world is larger than home," Bran replied. The three-eyed raven's voice came through the rustle of wings. "The dead do not want stones," it murmured. "They want doors." Jon's jaw clenched. "What doors?" The cave seemed to darken. Jon felt cold press closer, a presence beyond the roots. He turned his head and saw, in a distant vision, a field of snow under a black sky. Dead men stood in ranks, motionless as statues. At their center stood the Night King, tall, pale, crowned in ice. His blue eyes burned. The Night King lifted one hand slowly, as if reaching across an invisible glass. Jon felt the reach. It was not physical. It was a pressure against the mind, cold and patient, testing. The Night King's gaze slid, and for a heartbeat Jon felt those blue eyes brush against him through the weirwood net. Jon's breath caught. He felt suddenly like prey. "He sees," Jon whispered. Bran Stark's voice was quiet. He learns. The three-eyed raven's red eye glinted. He has always learned, it said. But now he is hungry for what you can do. Jon's fingers curled. He can warg. Not as you do, Bran said. Not through love. Through death. The vision shifted. Jon saw a living horse in a snowstorm, nostrils flaring, eyes wild. The horse stumbled, legs stiffening, frost spreading across its skin like rot. His eyes glazed over, turning pale, dead. Then it moved again, wrong, jerking, obedient to the cold will behind it. Jon's stomach tightened. He takes, Jon said, understanding. The three-eyed raven's voice was a thin blade. He will take beasts. He will take birds. He will take anything living that he can turn into a weapon. And when he learns enough, the raven wings rustled, as if laughter. He will reach for fire. Jon's mind flashed back to Drogon's heat, the hungry storm of that mind. The thought of the Night King touching it made Jon's blood go cold. Bran Stark watched him closely. You touched a dragon, Bran said. Jon's throat tightened. Only for a heartbeat. Bran's gaze sharpened. You can do it again. Jon wanted to deny it. He wanted to say no, that it was madness, that it would devour him. But he had felt the truth. The bond was possible. Blood, mind, something deeper. A door. What do you want from me? Jon demanded, voice rough. Bran did not answer. The three-eyed raven did. We want you alive, it said. We want you whole. We want you ready when the sky burns. Jon's hand pressed harder into the weirwood bark in the godswood, and sap stained his fingers like blood. He could feel Ghost beside him, tense, listening, as if the dire wolf heard the same whispers. Jon stared into the vision of the Night King and felt the cold will press again, testing, probing. Jon pushed back, not with domination but with presence, with stubborn human refusal. The Night King's hand paused. For a heartbeat, Jon felt a collision of wills, ice against ice, death against the man who had died and returned. Then the vision snapped away. Jon was back beneath the weirwood, hand on bark, breath fogging. Snow drifted down silently. Ghost's eyes were fixed north, his body rigid. Jon exhaled slowly, tasting sap and cold. He understood now. Winterfell was not the end. It was the beginning. The field between Jon Snow and Winterfell was a scar of trampled snow and churned mud, stained with old blood. The air was sharp with frost and iron. Men stood in ranks, their breath rising in pale clouds that drifted and vanished. Wolves howled somewhere far off, answered by the harsh barking of hounds within Winterfell's walls. Jon sat his horse at the front of the line and stared at the gates. He could feel every man behind him, their nervous energy, the weight of their fear, their hope clinging like frost to their eyelashes. He could also feel Sansa Stark beside him, rigid in the saddle, her hands clenched so tight around her reins her knuckles were white. Across the field, Ramsay Bolton rode out with casual arrogance, flanked by men in pink and black. His smile was visible even from this distance, a thin curve that promised cruelty. Ramsay Bolton raised a hand. The gates opened behind him and a small figure was shoved forward, stumbling in the snow. The boy's hair was wild, his clothes torn, his face bruised. For a heartbeat, Jon did not recognize him. Then the boy lifted his head, and Jon saw Stark in the shape of his mouth, in the slope of his brow.
Rickon Stark.
Jon's chest tightened so hard it hurt. Ramsay Bolton called something out, his voice carried by the wind like a blade.
Rickon Stark flinched.
Then he began to run. He ran toward Jon Snow. The field seemed to hold its breath. Jon felt his body move before his mind could catch up. He kicked his horse forward, breaking formation, riding alone into the open. Sansa Stark shouted his name behind him, but her voice came from far away, muffled by the roaring in Jon's ears. Rickon Stark ran hard, legs pumping, arms flailing. He looked small against the wide field, small against the looming walls of Winterfell. Jon saw terror on his face, terror and determination, as if the boy had decided that if he died, he would die running. Ramsay Bolton lifted his bow. Jon felt it before he saw it. The shift in Bolton archers, the tightening of strings, the ripple of intent like a wave. He could see it from above too, through a raven's eyes circling high. The lines of men, the angles, the cold mathematics of slaughter. He could stop it, a whisper in his skull said. He could reach into Ramsay Bolton and make his fingers loosen, make his arms tremble, make him miss. Jon's mind surged toward Ramsay Bolton like a knife. He stopped himself, not because he lacked the power, because he feared what using it would do to him, because the moment he took a human mind like a horse's reins, he would never be able to pretend he was only a man again. Ramsay Bolton released. The arrow hissed through cold air. Rickon Stark stumbled, turned his head as if hearing death behind him, and the arrow drove into him. The boy's body jerked and went down into the snow, arms outstretched toward Jon like a child reaching for home. Jon's horse screamed, startled. Jon slid from the saddle before it had fully stopped, boots hitting mud and snow. He ran the rest of the way on foot, breath tearing in his throat, Longclaw held useless at his side. He reached Rickon Stark and dropped to his knees, hands shaking as he turned the boy's body. Rickon Stark's eyes were open, staring at nothing. Blood stained the snow beneath him, bright and obscene. Jon's mouth opened. No sound came out. Rage rose in him like fire. He looked up across the field. Ramsay Bolton smiled. The world narrowed to that smile. Jon felt Ghost's fury in the distance, felt Tormund Giantsbane's roar behind him, felt Sansa Stark's scream rip across the field like a torn banner. He felt the northern army surge forward, wildlings and northerners charging in a wave of grief and rage. Jon stood slowly, lifting Longclaw. The temptation came again, stronger now. Take him, break him, make him feel. Jon's vision flickered, and for a heartbeat he saw Ramsay Bolton not as a man but as prey, a thing to be dominated, a mind to be crushed. Jon inhaled hard, filling his lungs with cold air until it burned. He made himself remember the scarred man's warning beneath the weirwood. A man who forgets becomes meat. Jon's grip tightened on Longclaw. He would kill Ramsay Bolton with steel, with blood, with the old ways. He would not become a monster to punish a monster. He stepped forward into the storm of battle as arrows began to fall. The first clash was not a clean meeting of blades. It was a collision of bodies, a violent grinding that turned men into a single snarling beast. Jon Snow was swallowed by it. Mud sucked at his boots. Snow melted under hot blood and became slick.
Steel rang.
Men screamed. Horses shrieked as they went down, kicking and thrashing. The air filled with the smell of sweat and shit and fear, and beneath it all, sharp and metallic, the smell of life leaking away. Jon moved like a man possessed, Longclaw flashing in arcs that caught torchlight and turned it into pale fire. He hacked through a Bolton man's shield, felt the blade bite bone, wrenched it free. Another man came at him with a spear. Jon knocked it aside and drove the Valyrian steel into the man's throat. He did not linger. There was no time to think. Thinking was for men who were not drowning. Somewhere to his left, one the giant bellowed, a sound that shook the world. The giant swung a heavy club with brutal simplicity, crushing men as if they were reeds. Bolton soldiers scattered before him, but archers loosed arrows that stuck in one's skin like black thorns. The giant barely seemed to notice. He roared again and kept moving. Tormund Giantsbane fought nearby. His face split in a grin even as blood ran down his cheek. He moved with savage joy, axe rising and falling, his laughter loud enough to pierce the scream of battle. "Crow!" Tormund roared, spotting Jon. "You brought the storm." Jon did not answer. His breath came in harsh gasps. His arms burned. His scars ached with every movement, as if death had left him weaker than he wanted to admit. Bolton arrows fell in volleys, darkening the air. Men raised shields. Some were too slow. Jon heard the wet thud of shafts striking flesh. He felt bodies collapse against him. He shoved them away, fighting to stay upright. Then the world tilted, not physically, In his mind, a raven dipped low over the battlefield, wings beating hard, its eyes sharp. Jon's awareness snapped into it without warning, too easy, too smooth, showing him the field from above. He saw the way Bolton men were bending, funneling his army into a tighter space. He saw the flanks tightening like jaws. Jon's human body kept fighting below, guided by muscle memory and fury, while his mind rode the raven's sight for a heartbeat too long. He saw his own dark head among the press, saw Longclaw flashing like a pale tooth. Panic flared, split. If he stayed in the bird, he might forget the man below. Jon forced himself back, hard, slamming into his own skull. Pain flared behind his eyes. He staggered, nearly went down. A Bolton man lunged. Jon caught the blade on Longclaw and shoved forward, driving steel into the man's belly. He breathed, forcing himself to stay in one body. Ghost flashed through the melee, white fur streaked with mud and blood. The direwolf's jaws snapped shut on a Bolton man's leg, dragging him down. Another man swung a sword at Ghost. Jon shouted without thinking, and the man's blade missed as Ghost twisted away. Jon felt Ghost's mind brush his hot, fierce, exultant in killing, and he used it like an anchor rather than a temptation. Ghost was near. Ghost was real. Ghost kept Jon from floating away into ravens and wolves and the cold net beneath the world. The Bolton line shifted. Jon saw it in the quick flicker of a raven overhead and in the way the press suddenly thickened. Shields slammed together, forming a wall. Bolton men advanced in disciplined steps, their shields overlapping, their spears poking out like teeth. They pushed, and Jon's men were forced back, compressed, crushed. The sound changed. Screams became muffled. The press turned into a choking crush where a man could die without a blade ever touching him. Jon shoved forward, trying to break the wall. He hacked at shields, his sword biting wood and iron. The Bolton wall held. Men fell, bodies piled. Jon's boots slipped on blood-slick mud. A man behind him screamed as he was trampled. Jon's lungs burned, air hard to find. Above, ravens wheeled, crying harshly, and the cries sounded like mockery. Jon felt the trap closing. And in the tightening dark of his mind, he felt something else too, cold and distant, like a finger tracing the edge of his skull. The Night King far away, learning. The world became a fist around Jon Snow. The Bolton shield walls pressed from both sides, their overlapping boards and iron-rimmed edges closing in, narrowing the space until there was barely room to swing a sword. Spears jabbed from gaps, stabbing into flesh that could not retreat fast enough. Men screamed, and the screams were swallowed by the crush, turning into wet, choking sounds. Jon felt a body slam into his back and stay there, dead weight trapping him. He tried to breathe and found only other men's breath, hot and sour, filling the tiny pocket of air between faces. Panic rose, an old animal terror that did not care about honor or kingship or vows. It only cared about air. Jon's vision blurred. He felt suddenly the urge to leave, to slip out of his body into raven sight, to escape this suffocating human trap and let the man below die while his mind flew free. The thought terrified him more than the spears. He clenched his teeth and forced himself to stay. Ghost. Jon reached for Ghost not with desire but with need, brushing the direwolf's senses the way a man presses his ear to a door. For an instant he tasted cold air, smelled open space, felt paws on churned snow. Ghost was fighting nearby, moving through gaps too small for men, carving breath into the crush. Jon used that sensation, open air, movement, life, to keep his own lungs working. He gulped in what air he could, forcing his chest to rise even as men pressed against him. A Bolton spear stabbed toward his face. Jon twisted, feeling the spearhead graze his cheek. Pain flared, sharp and real. Good. Pain meant he was still in his body. He shoved forward with all his strength, driving his shoulder into a shield. The shield barely moved. A man beside him screamed as a spear went into his belly. Blood sprayed warm against Jon's hand. "Hold!" someone shouted. "Hold!" Jon did not know who. sounded like a prayer and a lie. He lifted Longclaw and hacked at a spear shaft, cutting it clean. The broken end withdrew. Another spear stabbed in. The press tightened again. Jon's knees buckled. He fell to one knee, mud and snow soaking his trousers. A boot stepped on his hand. He bit back a scream, yanked his hand free, fingers numb and bloody. He looked up. For an instant, the world went quiet, as if even battle held its breath. Across the field, atop a low rise, Sansa Stark sat her horse, her dark cloak whipping. Her face was pale, set, eyes fixed not on Jon but beyond him, beyond Winterfell, beyond the field. Jon's mind flickered and found a raven high above, circling wider. Through its eye he saw what Sansa Stark saw. A line of riders, far off at first, then closer, a wave of steel and banners cutting through the white. Lances lowered, horses pounding, the knights of the Vale. Peter Baelish rode near their front, his cloak snapping, his face unreadable at this distance. The Arryn banners snapped in the wind. The sight was so sudden, so sharp, it felt like a blade slicing through despair. Jon's chest tightened with something like relief and something like fury. She didn't tell me, he thought, and the betrayal was hot. Then he saw Sansa Stark's rigid posture and understood. She had not trusted him to accept help from the man who had hurt her in ways she did not speak of. Or she had not trusted the help to come at all until it was here. The Vale riders slammed into the Bolton flank like a hammer. From above, Jon watched Bolton men turn, startled, their discipline cracking as horses and lances tore through their line. Shields broke, spears splintered, men fell. The pressure on Jon's body eased. Air rushed in. Jon gasped like a drowning man pulled to shore. He surged to his feet, roaring, an inhuman sound ripped from his throat by sheer stubborn refusal to die again. He drove forward with Longclaw, carving space, pushing with renewed fury. Wildlings behind him howled. Tormund Giantsbane's laugh rose, wild and triumphant. One bellowed again, swinging his club through retreating Bolton men. The Bolton line shattered. Men ran toward Winterfell's gates, tripping over bodies, abandoning shields. Ramsay Bolton's banners wavered as panic spread through his ranks like fire. Jon's lungs burned, but now the burn tasted like victory. He charged after them, not thinking, only moving, because the beast of the field was broken, and the wounded castle lay ahead, waiting to be taken back. The gates of Winterfell did not open for Jon Snow. They held, stubborn, iron-bound, as if the castle itself refused to admit how close it was to defeat. Ramsay Bolton's men scrambled atop the battlements, loosing arrows down at the victors below. The snow turned thick with shafts. One the giant lumbered forward, roaring, arrows bristling from his skin. He slammed his massive hands against the gate, splintering wood, shaking iron. The gate shuddered but held. Jon ran through the yard, dodging arrows, boots slipping on churned snow. He could hear the castle's heart beating, men shouting, doors slamming, hounds barking. He could feel, faintly, the roots under the stone, the old bones of Winterfell remembering Stark feet on these stones. He looked up and saw Ramsay Bolton on the battlement. Ramsay's face was tight now, his smirk gone. He loosed an arrow straight at one's eye. The arrow sank deep. The giant bellowed, staggering. Rage and pain filled that roar, so immense it made men flinch. Jon's vision tunneled. He felt Ghost's fury. He felt his own. He could reach Ramsay Bolton. He could take that mind and smash it until it begged. The thought came like a blade offered in the dark. Jon's jaw clenched so hard his teeth hurt. He refused. 1-1. Jon shouted instead, voice raw. Again. The giant, bleeding, blind in one eye, raised his fists and slammed them into the gate again. Wood cracked. Iron groaned. The gate gave way with a shriek, collapsing inward, and men surged through the breach like a flood. Winterfell's yard erupted into chaos. Bolton men fought desperately, cornered. Wildlings swarmed, screaming. Northern men pushed forward with grim purpose. Jon moved through it all like a blade, Longclaw cutting a path toward the keep. He found Ramsay Bolton inside, in the great hall, where the air smelled of smoke and fear. Ramsay Bolton stood near the high seat, bow in hand, a knife at his belt. His face was pale beneath the torchlight, his eyes darting like a cornered animal's. Jon Snow advanced, Longclaw held low. Ramsay Bolton drew an arrow with shaking hands and loosed it. Jon slapped it aside with his sword. The arrow clattered uselessly across stone. Ramsay Bolton reached for another. Jon crossed the distance in 2 strides and slammed the flat of Longclaw into Ramsay Bolton's face. The impact cracked like a bone breaking. Ramsay Bolton went down hard, blood spraying across his lips. He tried to scramble back, eyes wide now with genuine fear. Jon stood over him, chest heaving. The hall was silent but for distant fighting. Torches hissed. Shadows danced. Ramsay Bolton's mouth opened, and for a heartbeat Jon thought he might beg. Instead, Ramsay spat blood and tried to smile. "You can't kill me," he rasped. Jon kicked him. Ramsay Bolton's body slammed into the floor. Jon's hand tightened on Longclaw. He raised the sword. Sansa Stark stepped into the hall. Her face was cold, carved from winter. Brienne of Tarth followed her, torch in hand, her eyes grim. Davos Seaworth stood behind them, tense, watching Jon as if afraid of what he might become. Sansa Stark's gaze fixed on Ramsay Bolton. Something passed through her eyes. Pain, rage, and something harder, something that had learned not to break. Jon lowered Longclaw slowly. His voice was rough. "He's yours," he said. Ramsay Bolton's eyes flicked to Sansa Stark, and fear finally broke through his arrogance. "Sansa," he said, trying to make his voice smooth. "Listen." Sansa Stark did not answer. She walked past Jon as if he were stone and stood over Ramsay Bolton. Her hands were steady as she reached down and took his chin, forcing him to look at her. "Do you remember what you told me?" she asked quietly. Ramsay Bolton swallowed. "You were mine," he whispered, trying to summon cruelty as armor. "You."
Sansa Stark's fingers tightened.
"You said you'd always be with me," she said. "In my skin, in my blood." Her smile was small and terrible. "You were right." She released him and stepped back. Brienne of Tarth moved to the side, revealing a door open behind her. From that door came the sound of snarling. Ramsay Bolton's hounds were dragged forward on chains, their eyes bright, their ribs visible under their fur. They strained toward Ramsay Bolton as if they recognized him. The men holding them looked uneasy, but Sansa Stark's gaze did not waver. Ramsay Bolton's face twisted in panic. "No," he breathed. "No." Jon watched, chest tight, as the hounds were unleashed. Ramsay Bolton screamed as teeth found him. The sound was high, thin, and utterly human. It echoed off Winterfell stone, filling the hall with the raw truth of fear. Jon did not flinch. He did not turn away. He made himself watch until the screams stopped. When it was done, Sansa Stark stood still, her breath fogging in the torchlight, her eyes fixed on nothing. She looked like a woman who had finally closed a door that had been left open too long. Jon stepped closer carefully. "It's over," he said softly. Sansa Stark's gaze flicked to him. For a heartbeat, something like tears shone. Then she nodded once, sharp and final. "No," she said. "Now it begins." After, the castle smelled of smoke and wet stone and the faint, lingering copper of blood. Winterfell had been wounded, but it still stood. Men moved through its yards clearing bodies, hauling debris, dragging broken shields and spears into piles. Fires burned in braziers, fighting back the cold. The north arrived in cautious drips and then in stronger flows. Small lords, sworn swords, men with eyes like winter and faces carved by hardship. They gathered in the great hall beneath Stark banners that had been hidden too long. The direwolf sigil hung heavy above the high seat, its gray threads darker than the stone behind it. Jon stood before the lords with Longclaw at his side and felt their gazes weigh him like stones. He could taste their thoughts in the air without entering their minds. Respect, suspicion, fear, hunger for certainty. They had followed Robb Stark and watched him die. They had watched Eddard Stark's head fall. They had bent the knee to monsters because monsters had knives. Now they looked at Jon Snow, the bastard who had returned from death, and wondered what kind of monster he might be. Sansa Stark sat to one side, wrapped in furs, her face calm. Brienne of Tarth stood behind her like a white tower. Davos Seaworth lingered near Jon, not as a guard but as an anchor, his presence steady. Lyanna Mormont sat among the lords, small but fierce, her eyes sharp as a spear point. Tormund Giantsbane stood at the back with his wildlings, arms crossed, grin lurking, as if daring any lord to insult him. As the hall murmured, Jon felt ravens shift overhead. Their feathers rustled, a sound like dry laughter. He glanced up and saw them perched along the rafters in a dark line, watching. No ravens had lived in Winterfell's hall for years, he thought. The gates had been closed. The castle had been a cage. Now the ravens came anyway. Jon felt the roots beneath Winterfell too, deep under stone, old and stubborn. He could feel the godswood's weirwood like a pulse at the edge of his awareness, calling faintly. The Lord spoke. Questions about supplies, about rebuilding, about pushing north to reinforce the wall. About what Jon intended now that he held Winterfell. Jon answered as best he could, voice steady, refusing to let the strange cold inside him show. But beneath every word he felt the truth like an iron bar. None of this mattered if the dead came and the living were unprepared. When the hall finally quieted, Jon looked at the faces and said, "The war isn't over." Murmurs rose. A man scoffed. Another shifted uncomfortably. Lyanna Mormont's gaze did not waver. "The Boltons were a wound," Jon continued. "The dead are a sickness. They are coming." Some men laughed nervously. Others did not. The ones who had seen whites with their own eyes stayed silent, their faces pale. A raven croaked overhead. Jon's head snapped up. For an instant the raven's eye flashed bright, too aware, and Jon felt something cold press against it. Something not rooted, not living. A shiver ran through Jon's spine. The raven's head jerked sharply, unnatural, as if pulled by invisible strings. Its wings spread with a frantic flutter. Jon felt, faintly, a foreign presence scraping at the edge of his mind through the bird. Ice on stone. The Night King. The pressure was brief, a testing touch, and then it vanished, leaving the raven trembling. The bird croaked again, harsh and broken, then launched itself from the rafter and flew out through an open window into the snow. Jon's breath caught. No one else seemed to notice. The lords were too focused on their own fears and arguments. But Jon felt it, and the knowledge settled in him like lead. He can reach living eyes, Jon thought. He can take sight. The three-eyed raven's whisper slid through Jon's mind, cold and inevitable. "He learns," it said. "And you are late." Jon's jaw tightened. He forced his focus back to the hall. He forced himself to speak of rebuilding, of sending riders, of securing food and wood. He nodded to questions. He gave orders. He played the part of a man who had returned from death and still belonged among men. But all the while, beneath his composure, he felt the cold will beyond the snow pressing closer, patient as winter. When the hall finally emptied, Jon walked alone through Winterfell's corridors to the godswood. Ghost followed at his heel. He stood before the weirwood again, hand pressed to its bark, red sap smearing his fingers like blood. And in the deep, distant dark beyond the roots, he heard it, the slow, vast beat of wings, like thunder far away, fire waiting. They gathered again before dawn, as if the north could not wait for daylight to decide who it belonged to. Torches burned low. The hall was colder than it had been, the stone holding night in its bones. Men stood in furs and mail, their faces set with the stubbornness of a people who had been betrayed too many times to kneel easily. Jon Snow stood at the front of the hall, Longclaw at his side, Ghost sitting beside him like a white shadow made solid. He could feel every gaze on him, heavy with expectation. Sansa Stark stood near the high seat, hands folded, her face still. She did not smile. She did not look away. Her eyes held Jon's like a warning and a promise. "Do not break." Lyanna Mormont stepped forward first. "My lords," she said, voice small but sharp as a blade. "We have been led by liars and cowards. We have bent the knee to men who wore our banners and fed our sons to wolves." Her eyes swept the hall. "And we have paid for it." Murmurs rippled. Faces tightened. Men glanced at one another, remembering. Lyanna Mormont lifted her chin toward Jon. "Jon Snow fought for the living when the dead came," she said. "He died for it, and he came back." Her voice hardened. "If that is not the North, I don't know what is." A heavy silence fell. Then one lord stepped forward, a tall man with a hard face, and dropped to one knee. Another followed, then another. The sound of knees hitting stone spread through the hall like rain. Jon watched them kneel and felt something in his chest twist painfully. He did not want this. He had never wanted crowns. Crowns were what killed men like Eddard Stark and Robb Stark. Crowns drew knives. Yet as they knelt, Jon felt the roots beneath Winterfell stir, faintly. He felt ravens shift overhead, their feathers rustling. He felt the land itself leaning toward him, as if recognizing a familiar stubbornness. Tormund Giantsbane laughed softly under his breath, a sound full of savage delight. "They're making you a king," Tormund murmured. Jon did not answer. His throat had gone tight. One voice rose from the kneeling men, rough and urgent. "The king in the north." Another joined, then another. The words grew into a chant, filling the hall, pounding against stone. "The king in the north. The king in the north." Jon stood still, letting the chant wash over him. He felt Sansa Stark's gaze on him like a hand at his back, steadying. He felt Ghost's presence, warm and fierce. He felt, beneath it all, the cold pressure beyond the world, patient and hungry. He realized then that this was not a gift. It was a chain. If he accepted, he would not belong to himself again. Not truly. Not after death. Not after the weirwood. Not after this. Jon lifted his head and looked at the kneeling lords, at their cracked hands and weathered faces. He saw fear in them, but he also saw hope, small, stubborn, dangerous. He could not refuse them that hope. Jon drew a slow breath, tasting smoke and cold. "I am Jon Snow," he said, voice carrying. The chant faltered, listening. "I am Eddard Stark's son." His jaw tightened around the lie and the truth tangled together. "I am of the north." The kneeling men watched him as if he were a god or a curse. Jon continued, steady. "I did not come back to sit a high seat and drink while men freeze," he said. "I came back because the dead are coming. I came back because the world is breaking." His gaze swept them. "If you name me king, then you name me to lead you into that darkness." No one moved. No one spoke. Jon felt the ravens above shift again, restless. He felt the weirwood's distant pulse. He felt, faint and terrible, the beat of wings somewhere far away, like thunder waiting to fall. He swallowed and finished, voice low but iron. "Then I accept." For a heartbeat, the hall was silent. Then the chant returned, louder than before, shaking the torches, filling the stone with sound. "The king in the north. The king in the north." Sansa Stark's eyes glistened, but she did not let tears fall. She nodded once as if sealing a pact. Ghost rose and pressed his shoulder against Jon's leg, a firm, grounding shove. Jon rested his hand on the direwolf's neck and felt living heat under fur. Above them, ravens crowded the rafters like black knives. Jon stared forward into the torchlit hall and felt the crown settle on him. An invisible weight, colder than iron. In his mind, like a whisper carried through roots and wind, the three-eyed raven's voice returned, neither kind nor cruel, only inevitable. "Now," it said, "you must go where fire sleeps."